Hello, welcome back. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for joining us and speaking about ADHD in schools and the importance of awareness training. So we were meant to have we were going to speak to someone, Asenko from St. Albans, but she's not available to speak at the moment. So we're very lucky. Sarah's a coach for ADHD Advocate and runs our high school success program, but she's also a teacher, a teacher at specialist schools. So understands fully the importance of being able to look through the lens as a teacher to support kids with ADHD and autism and other needs. So yeah, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
So yeah, I thought it would be great for you to share. I mean, in terms of as a teacher, how come it's important, obviously, how come it's important to be able to look through that lens with these kids?
I think so. Basically, my background is I've been a Senko for 15 years in mainstream, and it's very difficult for teachers sometimes when they're faced with a classroom of 30 students to understand the specific needs. I think for those students that are diagnosed or undiagnosed, it's vital that the teacher is not perceiving them as being a naughty child, that they're understanding their individual needs, and that takes time. And again, time pressures of teaching, makes that very challenging. But what I've found is supporting teachers and being a teacher myself, if you invest in that time, it reaps benefits at the end. Unfortunately, what we often see is sort of punitive behavior management, which just doesn't stand, in the long run doesn't work for that student. So yeah, it's having that understanding of what ADHD looks like, how what it's like for the student. They don't get up in the morning and think, right, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to shout out, or I'm going to be fidgety, or I'm not going to be able to concentrate. That isn't what they intend to do. They go to school to want to learn, and the ADHD gets in the way of that. So as an educationist, as a teacher, it's really important that we try and give them strategies to help them in their learning.
It's hard though, isn't it, for teachers? Like you said, particularly, I guess in the mainstream, you probably maybe teach smaller classes now. Now you're in a specialist setting, but in mainstream,
In
yeah,
mainstream, yeah.
how you able to meet the needs of the kids that have these additional needs, and also obviously meet the needs of the ones that don't and keep them. Yeah, how do you juggle that as a teacher?
It is really difficult. And I think, again, it's sometimes you got the primary and the secondary behaviours, and it's sort of educating or helping staff appreciate that. Yes, low level behaviour, which can often be the case with ADHD, can be frustrating, but sometimes if you put small steps in place, like I don't know, giving them something that they need to do something with their hands. So, giving them something they can have in their hands. Or it might be that while you're teaching, you could stand close to them so that they feel that they're still being part of the classroom. When a question is asked, they often are the ones that want to blurt it out. They want to get it out. So another strategy is enabling them to write it down. So they're still expressing it, still being able to get it out, but it's not at the disruption of everybody else, because again, they don't intend to do that. It's just they're desperate to get that information out, particularly if it's something they're interested in. On the other side of that, when a child is not necessarily paying attention or is losing focus, it's sort of noticing that, and not that they're being lazy. It's not that they could be disinterested, because as you know, ADHD is like very much interest driven. Is it, at the end of the lesson, reflect on, can I change the way I teach? Is it more visual? A lot of the children I work with have had to copy off the board, and that's just really difficult for an ADHD. It is for a lot of students. So actually, what I have often said to my teachers when I was a senior leader is, if you if you teach to an ADHD or a dyslexic child, you're going to cover the whole class, because there's probably more there that, you know, particularly your inattentive students, ADHDers, that are just sitting at the back and making out that everything's okay. So yeah, but making sure that resources are visual, being sort of more proactive in the way you're teaching, so that students can walk around, have movement breaks that are proactive rather than reactive to the needs of the student. So
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because I know that sometimes, and obviously to manage the classroom as well, and a lot of teachers don't like or won't permit the child to go to the bathroom.
yeah.
But then, as we know, with some kids with ADHD, autism, the sensory, it can be maybe get too much. They need a bit of a break. It might be too noisy, or they just might need to move, like you said. And sometimes that can be an excuse to, I need to go to the bathroom because I need to get up and move.
Yeah.
So they can listen, come back and engage. Yeah. How did you navigate that in mainstream? Is it different in the schools that you're in now? There's more flexibility. What's the difference?
In mainstream, obviously you are catering for everybody's needs, and it is more challenging, although I would hope that, you know, with all the research that is out there and all the support that we can offer, that it will gradually get better. At the moment now, I'm teaching in a specialist school for ASD and ADHD. It is very different. I've got 6 in a class, but it's still interesting where some teachers expect students to stay on the norm, so they're still almost expecting mainstream behaviors, which is quite interesting to watch. So
Wow.
again, every child is individual, and even more so when they have ADHD or autism, and as I said at the beginning, it very much taking that time to understand them and know what works for them, you know, and what works for one might not work for the other, but being able the best for me is when I go in with a very flexible attitude to my teaching. So if it's not working, that I can adapt to the way it's going in the classroom. Because if a child is switched off, then sometimes it's reflecting on that and how you can change what you're doing.
Taking your lead, sounds like, yeah, taking your lead from the child, which again is very much more of a coaching approach in terms of setting.
Yes, but it does work. And so I think the more we can get out there and support teachers and help them with that, because that's confidence as well, because often teachers are nervous to do that because they feel they're losing control of the classroom. And it's being able to do that sufficiently, but still keep that control, if that makes sense.
No, definitely, because there is a drive, isn't there? Very much. I've been seeing in education and with the new government, focusing on behavior, and like so, kind of becoming more strict around behavior. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? How do you think that's going to go down with our neurodiverse children? That kind of approach.
It's going to be very difficult, isn't it? Because they, you know, as I said, they don't come in the morning to behave like that, or to show negative behaviors, which they're not really negative behaviors. It's just adapting the way we teach, adapting the curriculum to suit the needs of them, differentiating for them, which, you know, hopefully is going on. But again, like I say, it does take confidence, and just putting in that little bit of time and at the start will reap benefits, you know, later down the line. Otherwise, it's just constant, you know, I was coaching a child last week, it's constant detention, which just becomes so punitive. And that child is not really learning, you know, won't move forward from that.
Yeah. What about parents as well? How do you find with the parents of the neurodiverse children, in terms of how SENCOs generally, what you've seen in education, SENCOs and their approaches to parents, what do you find the most effective approach with the parents of neurodiverse kids?
I think it's having that consistent approach. So for me, it's that triangulation between parents and school and the student, but also empowering the student. So often we're making decisions for the student, A, as teachers, and B, as parents. And then when we come together as the adults, often those decisions are made, but the child needs to be at the focus of that decision, and they need to be making those decisions as well. You know, that doesn't mean that they are totally irrational decisions, but they have to be at the center of that in order for them to even move forward, because as we know, an ADHD, if they're told what to do, they don't tend to want to do it. I get that in class every day. It's like, no, you told me to do that, so I'm not going to do it now.
Yeah.
But so that very much as a SENCO, that's how I used to work, the triangulation with the parent and the child,
Yeah.
making sure that they had ownership of what they did, but that consistency of approach as well. And also, you know, as a educationist, I think it's important we ask the parents sometimes what works at home, because that might be a strategy that will work in school as well, and vice versa. So yeah, it's just being transparent with that. And at the end of the day, I think the child, if they know there's a supportive structure around them, then they will thrive within that.
Did you find as well, because I've heard like with Senkos, because I used to be a Sen governor, and so I worked with the Senko at the school, and she was saying that it can be difficult sometimes when you, because obviously under the Children and Families Act, there is a obligation on, you know, schools, local authorities as well, to identify as special educational needs. And so if you were doing that, did you find sometimes with parents when you tried to, you know, maybe, well, there's sometimes quite a bit of push, but how did you get through? How did you, because you obviously want to get the support for the child. You can see there's a, you know, undiagnosed SEN, and then be identified and addressed, but obviously getting the parents on board. Like, yeah, how was that with some parents?
Yeah, I think it's parents are scared when they, you know, and it's, I think it's making sure you've got all your evidence to start with, and you know, labels sometimes are not necessary, you know, they're not going to benefit, but generally, if a child gets particularly getting into senior school, a label sometimes can benefit them, definitely, you know, because then they're more understood, and that's scary for parents, mainly because they think of it as a negative. So my approach was to go into it that, you know, this is a positive thing, and let's look at the positive side of, you know, the neurodiversity of your child. And let's celebrate it more than let's, you know, I think the trouble is people look at it, like I say, in such a negative way, but let's celebrate it. You know, let's look at their strengths, what are the good things about them, and that tended to help a lot, really.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess it was safer then for parents to entertain the fact that there could be, and they're more open to it. But the specialist schools obviously have an advantage there in terms of being able to, you know, take that more, you know, celebrate and educate more around the different, you know, dyslexic. Like for instance, my eldest daughter goes to a dyslexic school. You know, a lot of their assemblies, you know, they have these people come in that have had dyslexia, that have done amazing things, you know, they really actively, you know, highlight the strengths and get these role models in. Mainstream school, when you compare in comparison, like what are mainstream schools doing in that respect?
Yeah, and I think that's what's really difficult for mainstream now, particularly as there are more and more students being diagnosed, and I think that's where the clash is coming, because mainstream are not necessarily wanting to diagnose, because that's going to make more work for them. Yeah, I mean, I worked with a dyslexic school, gosh, about 10, 15 years ago, and again, they said if you taught the whole class dyslexic friendly, then you're covering so many, you know, there's potentially a third of your class has got dyslexic tendencies. So if we change the way we educated, I think it would be a lot, you know, a lot more helpful to everybody. But that's like looking at the curriculum, looking at the way we teach, and so it's a huge thing, really.
Really? Yeah, I mean, you heard Dave, I don't know if you listened to David Gawork earlier, but yeah, he was talking about ADHD being situationally variable. And the problem is you can't really vary the situation in education. These kids with SEN, you know, this is the curriculum. You must do these languages, you must, you know, and a lot of kids with neurodiversity, some of them really struggle with language. They just can't grasp them. They're amazing, but like some just can't do it. But and there's no ability. Some, you know, in some schools they don't give you that exception. I know that some specialist schools would. I think was actually dyslexic schools. You don't have to do. They don't do languages in some of them.
No, I don't think they do.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't necessarily do GCSEs, or, you know, it can be very, very different depending. But I think in mainstream we're very driven by statistics and you know, examinations, and I think you know, expectations are incredibly high, so everybody's always fighting for that ranking, you know, for their school or where they are, and unfortunately the SEN child is the one that gets pushed out or can be lost in the system, and that's not really the teacher's fault or the school's fault, and really it's just that that's where they're having to head.
It is hard, isn't it? Because the teachers they've got, yeah, the pressure of teaching this particular curriculum. And we know with ADHD is if it's not relevant to them, there's no point, there's no point. And so, yeah, a lot of them just won't engage, can't engage with the learning. It's not, they can't see them applying this in their life. It's not relevant. And then they can't do it. And then they'll get in trouble because they're talking or trying to, you know, and get stimulated, go to detention. But actually, if they were able to choose, you know, a subject or, you know, or do it in a different way, a more kind of multi-sensory, practical way, then they would be very engaged and do really well. It's a shame that there's not that flexibility at all in kind of.
No, and I think that's the trouble, isn't it? And I think it's also training for staff. I mean, again, in teacher training, you get very little training for SEN. And yes, there are courses that you can go on, but again, they're very limited, and due to funding, it's quite hard. So yeah, it's just very difficult. And then suddenly, you know, you might have 2 or 3 students in your class that could have, you know, quite severe needs, and you know, you haven't got the skill set to be able to manage that, and you might not have a teaching assistant either, so it is extremely challenging.
Yeah, the resources. So yeah, because I guess there's this drive for inclusion.
Yeah.
So because you worked in mainstream for a long time. Yeah, and then you've also obviously now been working in a specialist school. So what are your views on the achievability and the benefits of this approach of, you know, inclusion, you know, mainstream for all?
I actually worked on something called the Inclusion Barometer in Norfolk, which the County Council wanted to put into place, and it was like an audit for all schools, but you know, it was another thing on top of Ofsted, so it, you know, it wasn't necessarily going to go down very well, and it didn't last. But when the part of the committee, you know, one of the he was the principal of one of the special schools in Norfolk, and he was very much about, well, everybody should be able to understand and be empathetic to special educational needs children, but I don't think everyone can. I think, you know, it's hard sometimes, and unless you've got that understanding and that empathy, it's very difficult to make it happen. And you know, it's understandable, a lot of people are in the profession because they want to teach, and it's a different way of teaching. It's not just, you can't just stand up and just do the job, if that makes sense. It's being more adaptable, it's being more flexible, and it's understanding, and you have to have a very deep understanding of that child, and know what ticks for them, and a lot of people think that you're letting them off, but you're not letting them off. It's just being flexible with the way you manage it, really. And as I go back to it, reaps benefits in the end, because that, until you've got that respect and that mutual trust with the student, it's very difficult to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, we see it all the time, don't we? And we talk about this in our own awareness training of schools, that depending on whether that ADHD likes the teacher and, you know, respects the teacher, you know, is able to meet their needs. You know, they very much, the performance in that subject completely is dependent upon that expression, that connection, you know, that relationship.
But like some of the parents I'm working with now, you know, they're quite frustrated at senior school. I think in primary it's more nurturing. You have one teacher and it's much more nurturing, so it's a lot easier to get to know that child and to be flexible. But once you get to secondary, when you've got very different teachers, you know, a lot of my parents are saying, this teacher's, you know, understanding my daughter, my son, and it's working and they're getting on well, but then the other teachers are not, and they're getting detentions in some subjects, and not understanding that lack of organization. You know, I had one last week and they'd forgotten their book, and you know, all it needed was someone to go to the locker with the student and they would have found the book, but the student was adamant because the locker was in a mess. And it's just little things that if
Yes.
people took a bit more time, it would solve a lot of the problem, really.
Yeah, that is, yeah, because another drive of ours with ADHD Advocate in this space is the teachers should coach first, then teach, you know, in terms of, yeah, you know, in terms of like, yeah, seek to understand. I mean, these are business principles as well, right? You seek to understand first, then be understood, which education, it's interesting. Education, no, it's the opposite. No, just be quiet, just like, you know, listen, understand what I'm saying, you know, learn it, be able to like get it out when you need to in that time pressured environment. You know, it's
Oh, yeah.
contrary to, yeah, why is it? It doesn't really set up people for success after school. It's a complete opposite thing. But you know, they leave school and then you're given permission to do it the way that actually it should be done, so you can succeed.
Yeah.
Any sense?
But there's also you know, there's a lot of theory that like very early years, so in early years a child is very independent, and that would suit an ADHD. You see they're
Or choosing what to, like independent play and stuff like that. Is that what
independent play, and they're curious, and so it's all the things that an ADHD would love, you know, their freedom, and they set really, and a lot of teachers will use that as the way they teach will be based on what the child wants to do. But because I did some research on that a few years ago, as we go through the school, we just strip all that independence away, and we say what we want the child to learn. And there are some schools I've worked with that are trying to put that back in, or particularly all the way through primary, to create that independence, because yeah, they're not. And as we know, businesses are struggling with that because our students are not independent learners when they leave with A levels, because it's been so sort of prescriptive in the way it's been given to them.
Yeah, it's such a shame because obviously the strengths of the neurodiverse, particularly ADHD, it is that out of the box thinking, the innovation, the creativity. But then it's like they're punished, you know, it's no, you're not going to do well if
Yeah.
you're going to learn this. Doesn't matter if you think it's wrong as well, or you think that, yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? It doesn't exactly set ADHDers up to succeed in that sense at all.
If you go into reception class, that's how they work, you know, it's perfect. And it's just, why are we afraid not to let that carry through, really? What is it? You know, it's all, it's societal norms tell us that a student has to go along this path, don't they? And they have to go to university. And if we try and move either side of that, then you know, we're not on the straight road. So until that changes, but we all affected by that, aren't we, as parents particularly, and as teachers. That's what we believe is the right choice, but it's not for so many students.
No, and what do you think about in terms of that? We were talking about this with Dr. Ferren around the increase in school avoidance, you know, like EBSA, I'm sure as a Senko as well. Yeah, what do you actually be interesting? So mainstream schools, so seeing the SEN, the kids with SEN in mainstream versus in a specialist school, the avoidance of school, which which kind of which setting obviously did kids avoid more with SEN?
I think because I was obviously in Italy over COVID, so I think a lot has changed since I've come back. But even in the special school, we're getting school avoidance.
Even in the schools
yeah, quite a lot, because particularly they don't like change, or they don't necessarily. Again, it goes back to that communication with the adult and that relationship with the adult. So if they feel that they haven't got that relationship, then they're avoiding school for that. And I think, again, that goes back to why we are seeing so much school avoidance, because there's more diagnoses, there's more neurodiverse being recognized, diagnosed, and but things aren't being put in place to support that. So if students can't cope, it's easier for them to stay at home, isn't it, really? Because you know, and then the mental health increases and the anxieties. When we had a student start at school, and she came from mainstream, and she was literally going in 2 hours a fortnight, because and I went to observe her and spoke to the teacher, and it was just because of this one teacher she liked, but she couldn't cope with any of the other classes.
Yeah, it's
So
tough.
that's the year 8 student. So, you know, so she was just staying off except for one class.
Wow. And then what about what's interesting? I found that obviously the social aspects of school can also be a big reason why the children refuse to go in. You know, like if they've had a fallout with a friend, or if they feel as if they don't, you know, at lunchtime, there's no one.
Lunchtime, yeah.
Yeah, lunchtimes. Yeah, I mean, yeah. How can teachers help in with that aspect of things? You know, if the child is struggling.
I think it's offering those sort of safe spaces, really. I mean, like the dining hall is a sensory overload for so many people, never mind, and primarily neurodiverse. Yes, and those social interactions are very difficult, and then you're just left out on the playground or in the dining hall. And so yeah, it's offering those clubs or safe spaces that a student can go to. And that's sometimes just what they need, isn't it? To be able to readjust and just have that time away from the overwhelm of everything else.
Yeah.
Like the corridors, you know, if you think about coming out of your classroom and then walking down a corridor where there might be 2,000 people in the school. They're huge, these schools. You know, it's pretty scary.
Particularly, yeah, and that would be, I would guess, particularly the case for the transition from year 6, you know, your
Yeah,
small,
yeah,
you
that's
know, yeah, little year 6 primary school, then year 7, you know, massive
yeah.
school, really big people. You're like one of the smallest now, be
Yeah.
completely overwhelming.
I
So,
mean, that transition is vital, and again, I've got a client whose daughter is just and having a terrible time this first half term,
mhm.
because she's gone from a very nurturing primary school where her ADHD was understood, and now she's going into that scenario that I shared, that 2 or 3 teachers are understanding and putting in strategies like a fiddle toy or something, or allowing her to take a rest break, whereas others are being very strict about her behavior and detentioning her all the time. So, you know, that transition, and that's where it's really important that the notes travel up, that everything is
Yeah.
transitioned, because so much often gets lost in transit and then the communication isn't there.
Because that is quite often the case, though, isn't it? That some teachers will understand and will accommodate, and that's great. But then these others, it's like they didn't get the memo. How does it work? So as a Senko, if you know, obviously as a Senko, you understand what the child's needs are, you get the reports, you know, the accommodations, and try and put them in place. How do you communicate all of those things to the other teachers? But then also, is it the Senko's role to also monitor, making sure that all of the teachers are I mean, I mean, that's just one child, you know, how does it happen? I don't know how Senkos do it. But yeah, how else can it work for the child if that's not happening?
Yeah, it is a huge role, and hence why so many get lost through the net, really. And it is really difficult, but that transition, particularly to the next school, is very important. Um, and sometimes when I've done transition within like the primary system, for example, sometimes it's hard when you're sharing everything, because you also, I think, what's important for an ADHD autistic child is that every day is a new day. You can't hold grudges against their behavior from today, because lots of things can affect their behavior. So sometimes I feel you've got to be careful what you do send up, you know, about a child. It's important that the teacher has a thorough understanding, but you also got to set your own relationship with that child and learn see them at face value, not what you've necessarily been told about them.
That is actually, I'm really glad you shared that. That is so key, isn't it? That is
Yeah,
really key.
every day is a new day for them, and it has to be, because I think that's what they really look for, is that you will always be the same, and that is really hard one to learn as a teacher, because you might get sworn at, you might get you know, abused, you might have lots of things, but they don't. Again, behavior is a means of communication, and I will always say that to teachers. And sometimes you just have to let it go, and I think we can take it too personally, which, you know, I totally understand, because sometimes if you've had a hard day, that's the last thing you want to have happen to you. And I'm not saying you just let it go. You still have to talk to that student about it and do some restorative discussion around it. But every day starts a new day for them,
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, that is so important because, again, what David was saying about ADHD being situationally variable. And so, like you said, yeah, every day is different. There could be a day where maybe someone says something, or maybe even in the cafeteria, it's not the right food, so they don't get to eat anything because, they tend to be picky eaters, some of them as well. And then so they've got less in their tank and they have a massive meltdown. And yeah, so I think it's that kind of benefit of the doubt type of thing. Is that the
Or
type of,
something happened at home. Often, things can happen in that first lesson in the morning, and all it would take probably is the teacher or someone to take them out and say, look, did something happen? Are you okay? But if then recognizing that that behavior is slightly different or slightly worse than normal or something, there's usually a reason behind it. And it's looking at the bigger picture rather than just what's in front of you. Because,
yeah.
and again, and that goes back to but behavior management, often you might get, well, they might get their detentions or whatever on a Friday, but if an ADHD has behaved on a Monday, they can't equate to why am I
Oh,
getting that on a
it's so true.
Friday? It's got to
Yeah.
be instant. Like reward has got to be instant, so has the punishment, so to speak, got to be instant.
Yeah, no, but again, you've got the benefit, your knowledge obviously of ADHD is vast. You really get it, particularly as well now that you're coaching.
Yeah.
And because you're taking that coaching approach and you're using that in teaching. Can I ask, so taking that, because you are a coach, a qualified coach as well, what are the benefits of using a coaching approach? Like, how often do you use that approach in school? And how do you blend the coaching and the teaching? And what are the differences and the impact, effects? It's interesting.
That was a tricky question. I don't know. I think I naturally do it anyway, so it's tricky, isn't it? Um, I suppose oh gosh, I suppose you're putting it back when the teaching, it's giving them ownership of it again is what I'm trying to say. So you're working on it together rather than it doesn't work particularly in the special school I'm at if I teach to them, I suppose they have to have some sort of ownership with it. So I've got one particular class where I recognize what their strengths are, and so I've adapted to that. Like they particularly, for unusual for autistic and ADHD, they love acting, so we've done play script in English, and that really engaged them. Whereas they just weren't interested in. So I think it's looking at their strengths and yeah.
And again, I mean, that to me sounds very much a coaching approach in that you're like what David was saying in terms of, being able to adapt to that person and their way, their type of ADHD, their kind of processing styles, like how, how they're going to engage and connect with.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you are using a coaching approach, sounds like, and you're very much leading from that place of curiosity, it sounds like, as well, not assuming.
Yeah, assuming. Well, and again, it's like, some writing, we know that writing is quite hard for ADHDers, and so there are different ways they can do it. There's voice technology they can use now. There's we're in the 2024, so there are so many different ways that we can support the students using technology. For example, the slides on the board, they can be given the slides on. I know not every school can afford technology, but an iPad where they can flick through the slides at their own pace, or they're not having to necessarily keep up with a teacher, or can have them, they need it to consolidate what they've learned if they've missed, if they've switched off. I mean, and doodling's another thing that I think as teachers are sometimes afraid that if the child is not giving them visual eye contact, that they're totally disengaged, but they can do two things at once, and often they are listening. And again, that goes down to confidence and allowing that to happen, but realizing that it is work, that it's okay. I mean, it's so different for teachers. It's really hard for them.
It's such an impossible job. Like, but on that one with the doodling, often like when they get their detention and they're talking and because they're bored, that they're doodling to try and stay interested.
Yeah.
They're actually trying to engage. But you're right. Unfortunately, sometimes teachers can just see that as you're not listening. focus on me,
Yeah.
don't. But then
Yeah.
as soon as they stop, the brain just, and
Yeah.
then they might look like they're listening now, they're just looking at you, but nothing now is going in whatsoever.
Yeah. No,
No?
it's really difficult.
So
Yeah.
again, I think that's where a coaching approach, would be so good. Maybe like, so, if the child is doodling, maybe that teacher, and I'm sure this is probably what you do, and you're able to do this in that SEN setting, specialist setting, you know, how does that, I see your doodle, noticing like we do in coaching, and asking, getting curious, like, oh, I see you're doodling. How is that, helping you? Listen, or like how come you're doodling while we're trying, talking about this thing? How come you're doing that?
It's quite funny though, Stephanie. I think it was easier for me in mainstream than it is in the. I think it was
Oh,
more, I could do it with students more in mainstream. Actually, the TAs particularly struggle with anything that they think that everyone should be on there. It's quite interesting, quite fascinating. I only had a student the other day who was drawing, and the TAs were very much, you don't draw when the teacher's talking. So
which is
yeah. So
that
no, I think mainstream, I used to always have students that doodled while I was teaching. Oh.
okay? But you're saying the teaching assistants sometimes didn't do
And
it.
yeah, so it's educating everybody, isn't it? And I think the more we can get out there but almost it's modeling it. We've got to model it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It is tough. I mean, I personally don't think teachers get paid enough to do what they do. I'm sure, like, particularly for teachers that have ADHD as well, I don't know how they manage the sensory challenges and also the organizational challenge. There's a lot of overwhelm, I can imagine, and burnout.
yes.
But but then I think there are a lot of neurodiverse teachers because neurodiverse people, they love to contribute, they love to help, and they also love to share their knowledge.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, definitely. No, I think there are a lot of neurodiverse teachers and uh yeah, so which is good and bad in some respects, or not good and bad. That doesn't but yeah, because I think sometimes the teachers then need control, so that can make it more challenging. Yeah, so
Yeah. So would you recommend then, obviously, if that's the case, kind of like what we're talking about with parents and their children with Dr. Farron, and that, again, if a teacher thinks that they've got ADHD or, autism, there's real benefit to, checking whether they have it, getting assessed, and then getting support for their,
I mean, I often laugh because a lot of teachers are OCD about,
yeah.
everybody's book's got to be the same, and so it's sort of having that sort of conversation, but that sort of joking about it. I think they always recognise it, but yeah, and I think how deeply they recognise it with how it is impacting on certain children. We know that handwriting is difficult now, and there's again a lot of research about the fact that we're on screens all the time, so the children aren't using the particular muscles that help with handwriting. So boys aren't climbing trees anymore, and so that's affecting handwriting. So there's a lot of things that are factors, but again, it's time with the curriculum, with everything that has to be done to get in this, support for fine motor skills and building on those skills. So yeah, it's just trying to pack in everything really.
That sounds like a very ADHD problem, trying to pack in everything, but even more, in this role. So I guess just finally then, what advice would you give to, teachers? How best can teachers, support these students, these often very talented students that with massive potential? What are the kind of main things teachers need to be aware of?
Thing again, going to the coaching approach and I know that does happen in some schools where they mentor students or and having that time to take that discussion with a student and say, look, what are the challenges, how can we support that, what would, and trying different things, and what might work this week might not work next week, but just sort of, particularly if a child is showing that repetitive behavior, when you're talking that they're shouting out, or when you're asking a question and you're finding yourself that if you're starting to say the name of a certain child on a regular basis, then it's the children that you get to know really quickly. And how can I support that, reflecting on how I'm teaching, or what small changes could I make? And if I, is it worth, chatting to that child, and how could we change things? So for me, that's the biggest starting point, really, to get to know the child really well. What are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and how can we support these to move forward? Because if the child knows that they're, again, back to coaching, listened to, but actively listened to, not just just a few, but actively listened to. And that was in a school that I worked, we identified certain children, and they got half an hour with the teacher, so the teacher was released to have that half an hour mentoring time a week.
Wow.
And that does have an impact, but again, it's it's funding and being able to release that to do that. But as I said, if the small things can sometimes build up, and then in the long run, that's going to benefit the student.
Yeah, definitely. It is. It's that ability to look through that ADHD lens again, that strength.
The bigger picture.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, again, I think leaning into interdependence, making sure you've got support, because the teachers, you've got to hold the space, you've got to give so much. You need to also make sure you've got enough to do that. So to make sure that you are also prioritizing your own health and mental health. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Thank you, Sarah. So guys, we'll have a 5-minute break just before we go into the high school success program. So we'll come back in 5 minutes, and we're going to talk about the high school success program that we run at the ADHD Advocate, and just talking about all the main kind of things that we see benefiting these kids, and just talking a bit more about how this particular program. So we'll come back in 5 minutes. So we're going to just take 5 minutes. Yeah. Be back in 5.
Okay.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Okay. Welcome back. Thank you for the short break. Us ADHDers sometimes, like the students with ADHDs at school, we sometimes need these little breaks to get momentum going again. Like David Gewirtz said, us ADHDers have a deficit of momentum. So we do what we can to reignite, reinvigorate, and get moving again. So welcome, Sophie. So what we're going to do now, we would like to talk about our high school success program. So Sophie and Sarah, in addition to Sarah being a teacher, and she was wearing her teacher hat when we were talking about ADHD awareness at schools, she's now wearing a coaching hat. And yeah, so Sophie and Sarah are our academic coaches at the ADHD Advocate. So they run the high school success program for teenagers doing GCSEs and A levels. They also provide one-to-one academic coaching as well. And so today we were just going to talk about the high school success program, and kind of more specifically the challenges kids have, the students have with studying GCSEs and A levels when they've got ADHD and autism. And what we've seen with our kids that do this program, the benefits that they've reaped from the program. And we're actually going to have a student and his mum, Charlie and Trisha, hopefully will attend at 7:20 to talk about how it's been for them. So you'll be able to hear the many benefits that they both receive through the program. So hello, Sophie and Sarah. So Sophie, did you want to maybe talk a little bit firstly around, what kind of challenges have you noticed that students with ADHD and autism, what do they have? What's getting in the way?
It's the classic, really. Time management, being aware of how long it's going to take them to finish their homeworks, but can also moving during their exams, understanding how long it's going to take to do certain questions, and realize if they've got enough time, and if they've chosen the correct question given the amount of time they've got left.
That sounds like overthinking. I'm hearing some of these ADHDs, they overthink.
Yeah.
Decision making.
Yeah, exactly. Which then is going to have an impact on actually how much time they spend overthinking, and how much time they actually spend doing the actual exam and answering the questions. But also, for example, in exams themselves, understanding fully the question at, reading it the first time and maintaining the topic of their answer based on only the question they've been asked. So not, moving on the side.
Getting distracted as we do, going down the rabbit holes.
Yeah, exactly. But also what I've seen is like being able for them to understand what is going on in them, let's say, because they haven't got the ADHD lens, so they don't quite get why they do certain things, or perhaps they realize that they only work better at in the library, but then they don't put it in place as a support for themselves because they haven't done the connection of, oh, that is because of my ADHD and that's where I study best. So how can I help myself, to achieve my final goal? So those are the first ones that are popping into my mind.
Yeah, they're good ones. Yeah, very common. And Sarah, any ones in particular that you see the challenges?
For me, it's procrastination, just not getting on with things, unless they've got someone holding them accountable, really. And that can be parents if they've got that sort of relationship, but often it's hard for parents to do that because it just comes across as being nagging. Teachers as well. And if we go back to the conversation I was having about teaching, and there's so many expectations for them with their exams, with the subjects that they're taking. So it's often avoiding that. But yeah, for me, it's that procrastination, not leaving tasks till the end, or leaving a revision. And then, I was talking to one last week and it had a mock, but realized that they hadn't done any work for it. So couldn't really have expected to know much. And so, yeah, helping them build, but a lot appreciate the body doubling. Because that's when they can bring those tasks to those sort of sessions and then be held accountable for it. It's actually timetabled for them in that respect.
Yeah, and like you said, the procrastination and also not understanding the level of knowledge in any particular subject. Then quite often, right, they come to us, they're not very confident, they're feeling overwhelmed, and they're catastrophizing.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do in the program, the gap analysis, helping them, go through each subject and getting that perspective. And quite often, once they've done that, they just, oh wow, I'm doing a lot better off. I'm a lot in a better position than I thought I was. That's kind of what I see a lot of.
But also the steps that a lot of them want to do everything into such big steps. So it's helping them break those steps down so it's far more achievable, so they actually get there. So instead of procrastinating about a big thing that I've got to achieve, if we've broken it down into small steps and done, I don't know, 5% of that, it's the small wins, isn't it? And celebrating those small wins. And I think once they start doing that, then they get more on board with it, with the bigger things, and really they'll achieve the bigger things as well.
Yeah. Sophie.
Yeah, because it's starting that is a big issue, isn't it, for them? Like the procrastination is also a consequence of how hard it is to start to do certain things because they do get overwhelmed by the amount of information or things that they have to do. So as you said, Sarah, the study halls have been really, really helpful because that's when they know everyone is doing their homework or, their studies anyway. And so it's easier to start because it's been shared with others.
I think what's really important is it's not just the study, is it? It's the working with them, it's their downtime, that's being really positive and how they're using that downtime. And again, small steps and helping them recognize that what is igniting their passion to go back to what they were doing. because often they'll take a break, but it's not re-energizing them. So it's making,
Mhm.
you know, and then identifying with them, you know, what did energize them? Was it exercise? Was it playing the piano? What was it? And then let's put more of
Power
that
nap.
in. And once they do that, then, you know, they feel a lot better.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what about as well sensory challenges? Remember in one of the early programs we did, did you remember when the students started sharing some of the sensory challenges they had, which I think for a lot of them were a source of shame. Not only were these sensory challenges getting in the way of their being able to regulate their mood, because quite often some of the sensory things would trigger them, get them very kind of angry, and that would affect their relationships. And then because there was a rift in relationships as well, that would then have a knock-on effect on their ability to actually study and work. And in that environment where they felt safe to share, because everyone's got ADHD, you know, they've all got similar issues. And that's the impact that was able to have on ADHD is in terms of no longer feeling guilt or shame, and that this was just normal for us. This is normal for us.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, and also a bit of humor there as well. A lot of ADHD is again that guilt and shame, but the students were kind of like made a bit of a joke of it. And I think that's one of the massive benefits of the program is that, you know, you're in a community like-wired students, because quite often some of the students would say they don't know anyone else with ADHD in their school or class.
And interestingly, humor often comes up as one of their top signature strengths. It's how they're using that humor. And with some of my clients, I've told them to use humor within their break time because that's a way of energizing them. But yeah, like you say, they will talk about with some friends that they can joke, and that does help release that tension. But yeah, using humor is really important.
Yeah, that's their signature strengths, and that's another thing we do in the program. So yeah, it may be helpful for us to describe to everyone the different steps. So we have what we call 6 steps to academic success, and you know we can each talk about the different ones. But the first step is basically looks through the HD lens, which is what we were talking about. Obviously, Sarah was talking about how important that is for teachers. And obviously, it's so important for these students to be able to understand the ADHD and be able to distinguish between the ADHD traits and what they would have put down to character flaws. You know, the narrative of these kids is pretty bad. Their negative self-talk is usually quite off the charts. There's, again, a lot of shame, all that negative messaging that Alexia was talking about earlier. I think 20,000 that the kids have or something by the time they reach, I can't remember when exactly. But it's really negative. The lens, it's not a good one. So the first thing we need to do is to help these kids tell a new, more empowering story about their ADHD, because, you know, that is and it's what David Gewerk was talking about first as well. We need to, you know, fix that first, you know, and come from that place before we kind of do anything else, right? So that's a really powerful step, and we actually bring parents into that step as well. So, and we've got actually, and in the timing on this was perfect because we've got Charlie and Trisha who were able to attend that step 1, looking through the HD lens, where parents could attend and be able to hear for themselves how the ADHD was impacting their child's ability to study and be able to, you know, modify their approach, because they've been able to now adjust expectations and change things that maybe weren't working. So welcome, Trisha and Charlie. Can you hear us, Trisha?
Hello, yes, can do.
Hey, Charlie.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Oh my gosh, it's good to see you guys. It's so good to see you. Charlie, where are you? Are you at university now, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm at university. I'm in one of the practice rooms.
That just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Really, how are you? How are you going? Because obviously, and that's the thing, you know, high school success program. We're working with you to get here. Yeah, how is it? How are you finding it?
I'm finding it really good. It's so nice just to, be at university, you know, stress-free, and yeah, it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. It's very sociable too, which is good.
That's good.
Yeah, I've got a Halloween social thing which
Oh
is like,
God.
yeah, it's so yeah, that'll be fun. But no, it's going really good.
You look really well. You look different even to when you were doing the program. Yeah, Trisha, he's looking, it's the hair, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was as of yesterday. That was a bit of a
Ah.
shock. He did ring me to warn me so it wasn't the first time I was seeing him. Otherwise I would have been going, what's happened?
It's him. It is you. Trust you with winter approaching though, right?
Yeah,
The time blindness.
It's not as cold as I thought it'd be, so that's quite good on the head.
Okay.
So the winter, it's not too bad in winter.
Yeah. And so how are you finding the university kind of environment? Like was it the right university that you chose? Because obviously we talked about the importance of the right environment. How are you finding this particular university for your ADHD in particular?
Definitely really good. It's nice, like, because I'm in like the arts building. It's nice and it's chilled out. There's a lot you can do, a lot of places you can go. Like there's nice places I can relax and then do work where it's quiet and things. So it's perfect. It really is, and they've got a lot of support within the buildings and stuff. So especially for ADHD too, it's not like school, overwhelming and too much happening, and the structure's awful. It feels the right place for me.
And in terms of what you're studying as well, like how are you finding it?
I think good. There's a lot of support. I mean, I was just doing some work before in like the library area, but the course itself, it would have been quite challenging if I hadn't done the program and stuff, because generally, like, I was doing my work before and I was like, I'm doing an essay on music and context.
Oh.
And I was thinking, I thought for a second, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, but then I realized I actually know what works for me, and then I just broke it down, and then I stayed there for about 2 hours, so it was really good.
That was without our body double session, because that just took me back, guys. Sarah and Sophie, you remember the study halls, and I think Soph and I, we split up 2 of the pieces that you were doing. I remember we were looking at the 2 different essays.
Yeah, the 2 different ones. Yeah.
I
That was
accepting them.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm getting emotional now.
Oh.
Yeah, I miss that's what I mean. Like when seeing you now, and that was the beauty. It's not just you guys and this students with ADHD and you guys kind of bonding, but we bond with you. We're on the journey with you. Yeah, and that's what Sophie meant. She felt like crying because we are so on the same journey, and it's fun. We have fun, don't we, guys? That's important, and that's important. You remember the study halls.
I do.
Mixing it up a bit.
Definitely good to have like the social side as well, talking to each other, and then it actually, it was good. I had fun doing the study sessions, which is studying was actually fun for once, which is surprising, but it was really good.
Well, we sometimes had to say, Charlie, what are you actually doing?
Yeah. Or I was eating sometimes. A lot of the time, I remember I'd have my dinner halfway through.
The chicken wings.
Yeah, that was it.
Still,
that was because of my bad time management, not getting tea out early enough.
Oh no.
But you need to keep yourself fueled anyway, so it doesn't really matter, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's just so good to see you, reach that goal. You're in a place that you're happy in doing what you love. And so
that you've taken the right choice for yourself. That's the most important thing, isn't it?
Definitely.
I mean, how did the program help you, make this right choice for yourself? What would you say particularly helped?
I think I was learning about like all the different thoughts, because I'd usually struggle with having all these different thoughts, like, oh, which path to go, and thinking about everything at once, and especially stressing over it. The program definitely just helped. Having that support, the support of you guys helped so much, through the process of, even when I thought, oh, maybe this university is better for me and which way to go. It helped me know what I wanted to do myself, rather than, what other people wanted me to do, or like how I was going to do English and music, but really English just as a safe option, which I know now, especially after being here, that would just be a chore, and I find any passion in doing English. So now just doing music is perfect. It's what I wanted to do. So just having the support, you know, and knowing what I want to do, and sort of not really doing the people pleasing as well.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about that, didn't we? You know, we did there's fun webinars where you guys decided to get very creative and like literally write all over the presentation. But you know, I know we did that embracing failure. I remember that day when you came in and we were doing embracing failure, and it was very timely because you were saying you're getting really worried about the upcoming exams, and your friends as well were kind of catastrophizing. But you remember you came in and you were feeling kind of, oh God, but what happened there? Remember?
Stressful time. And then once, you know, I sort of came in, I was like, right. And then you guys sort of, you know, support me in that way. That was, at the time, it wasn't the best, but it really did help so much, because I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go, what other people are going to think. That was another thing. When actual results day came, I remember some of my friends were like, oh, I haven't got what I wanted. And then I thought about how we talked about it, and I was like, it's okay, there's still, and they ended up getting in anyway. So even I was relaxed. Once I was in results day, I was relaxed. But before, when we didn't have that talk about like the stuff like the, you know, the idea of failure and things like that and other people's perspective, now that after I had that, it definitely changed my mindset about it all, and for the better, you know, it really did.
Yeah, I definitely think, yeah, because I remember, you know, when you first came in, it is that people pleasing, and that really stops us from, you know, getting clear about what it is we actually want. And it stops us not just from getting clear, but even when we are clear, going for what we want, right? But it sounds like, you know, the program's really helped you with that, like get clear, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and then giving yourself permission to do it despite maybe risking not pleasing, but
Yeah.
you know who you are and what you want.
I'm not like, you know, on both sides of the fence. I'm much more decisive now, which it's all come to play, like the people pleasing and the RSD, like how I've all, you know, now I've been able to connect it. It's much better, and not just with studying and that, like just personal life as well. It's yeah, it really has.
Isn't that great? Yeah, Sophie did quite a few one-to-one coaching sessions with you as well, which, you know, I'm sure you found really helpful.
Definitely. That, yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. Now, well, I'll move on to Mum now. So, yeah. So Trisha, obviously we had that first session looking through the ADHD lens that you were in with some other parents and their, you know, kids. Yeah. How did you find, what impacted kind of understanding, being able to look through the ADHD lens? How did that change things for you, supporting Charlie through the A levels?
Yeah, I mean, enormously. I think for the first time, I felt someone understood from, I guess, my perspective and Charlie's. But I think the benefits for him were in that I understood more about what was going to help and what was going to hinder, what was going to get in the way and make things worse. So although it was difficult, I tried to change that sort of approach. I know sometimes I've probably fell back into the traditional parenting approach, but it was that trying to be, I suppose, take a more coaching approach myself, in a fairly basic way, but just asking Charlie more what would help, giving him more space, just not putting so much pressure on the both of us, really. I think having I mean, from my perspective, I suppose, I mean, it's great to hear what he said, but my observation was it gave him more an awareness of his strengths and preferred ways of learning and techniques, and then he could teach me. He would often say, Mum, I've learned about that and that's not going to help, or that's really not helping me, Mum. So fine, you know, and to kind of listen, and knowing that he'd had that from yourselves, it kind of made me back off a bit. You know, it wasn't just him making it up and being difficult. I think both of us understanding about knowledge about ADHD and the importance of creating the right environment for learning and study and relaxation. moving around the house and stuff like that, just trying to organise, and me taking some of the pressure off, as in still doing stuff for him so he could tidying his room because it just wasn't going to get tidied or whatever, just prioritizing a bit on his studies. And I think him having reassurance, and myself, that it's okay to ask for help and support. I think the key about interdependence rather than independence all the time. But he has shown he has wanted to be more independent, and he does seem more confident and comfortable with himself. And he's gone off to university to embrace that, and he's quite open about his ADHD. He's happy to access support on offer. He's definitely coping with and enjoying being away from home. We still stay connected. But I'm over the moon, but through the A levels, it just released some of that pressure. I didn't feel like I was so alone with it. Yeah, I mean, I had more, but I don't know if you're going through those particular questions, but that's probably enough for now. I would also say, I mean, he hasn't said that, but he decided to come off medication and he's coping really well. And it sounds like he's using the techniques and the coping strategies. So we had a little bit of a battle about that, because I was like, keep it going until you get there. But it was just not very conducive for student life for him at the moment.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's quite
having to get up early, and it was affecting your appetite, wasn't it, and things like that. So you decided yourself that, but I supported you with that, so that's fine.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like definitely your relationship, and I guess during A levels, during these kind of stressful times, that is so important, isn't it? That you're there as a real support, as from a pastoral perspective, as opposed to driving to do this, but kind of being there for him knowing that you understand, emotional support. Did you find that the program helped you be more of that for him?
Definitely. I think you're right. It was a very stressful time. I think Charlie appreciated that I was trying to help and get support, but once the program started, it did feel like this pressure was lifted a bit, and I think it was more of a shared responsibility then. I didn't completely leave it, but I think, as I say, we've both had that benefited from having a greater understanding of what helps and doesn't. So I think it just was a more, I suppose, calmer approach. I think even though internally I might have still been anxious, thinking,
Dreaming.
Are we going to get through this? Charlie, you really shouldn't be, lying on your bed staring at the ceiling. But I just learned to back off a bit, and I think giving up some of that control, sometimes still pushing, but letting him take some more of the risks and responsibilities. But I felt the support for parents directly was really helpful. I think there's loads of resources there, but I was quite time limited with work. So I think that face-to-face was beneficial for me. I would have liked to delve in and looked at all the resources that are available, but I think for me, the face-to-face and knowing Charlie had that, and the peer support and the study halls and the Saturday check-in, it was brilliant, really. So I think we probably got on a bit better, hopefully. He would agree that.
Yeah,
and it's still stressful. A levels are stressful, aren't they?
Yeah, you can't take away that, isn't
No.
it? It's still a stressful moment,
Yeah.
but if you can relieve a bit
Yeah, definitely.
that.
It's also the memory, I'm hoping, as well, Charlie. Like, as I was saying, we did have some fun. I mean, that compared to if I mean, I know for me, it will always, that memory for me, even as coach, it's there. I really did enjoy those times. But yeah, I guess in terms of if you weren't in the program versus obviously you being in the program and having those interactions and the banter and the, in terms of enjoyment, not saying that you can possibly enjoy your A-level study, but yeah, how would you describe the difference it made to have that type of journey as opposed to if you're on your own?
Well, it was lovely to not just have like people to talk about the same sort of, I wouldn't say struggle, well, it could be struggles or just situation, but also the fact that like the other people, obviously they have ADHD, and the coaches too, like the understanding is there too. So yeah, I mean, just having fun as well. It didn't feel like a chore to be doing work, or as well as learning. Like there's so much that I've learned that I've just, I'm still realizing today, but I didn't think I was learning at the time. In that, like, it didn't feel like, oh, I'm having to learn this. I was like, I'm interested in this, and I generally, like, I understand this. I just didn't. I needed the right sort of mentoring for it. So, definitely, it would have, I'd say sixth form life and just A levels in general would just, it wouldn't have been as good of a time if I look back at it now. Definitely. So I'm very happy with how it all went, and I had good fun throughout. So
Yeah. Now, what would your advice be to, I guess, parents that are considering, this program for their kids with ADHD for GCSEs or A levels? Yeah, what would you tell these parents about the program in terms of benefits generally?
Well, I mean, the amount of benefits, like with obviously personal growth, for the individual themselves, but also the things like relationships. I found like it's much more easier to express feelings in a way that both your parent and yourself can understand. Like with my mum, I think it feels like she can now like more express her care, and I can more sort of show how I'm feeling at the same time, rather than telling and telling, like before it sort of felt like she might not have understood what I was saying. Like, it's not that I don't want to do this work. It's that I just don't, I don't have that feeling for it at the moment, whereas she could show that she's a bit not concerned, well, concerned maybe sometimes if I wasn't necessarily doing it, but like it's just the better understanding and the amount of benefits that it has just in general, as well as academic benefits, with results, just with life, with social, instances, the amount of social things I've done where I've realized how much of a change there is compared to before the program.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually important. And it's, I guess us calling it an academic success program, we're really kind of ignoring some of probably, well, generally the more important successes that you derive from doing the program in terms of, just being with people, relating to others. Also, getting clear about your own goals and reaching them, going for them, dealing with rejection sensitivity, which comes up all the time, like life skills, So I guess in terms of, you said socially, how did the program help you on that side of things?
Well, just more doing things for myself than other people. Like if it was at the start of the course, if I was doing my work and my friend messaged me saying, do you want to go for a drive, or do you want to go out and do this thing, I would drop it straight away and I would go. But now I realize, right, what's more important here, what is my priority, but also, just knowing that I've got more of a self-control, especially socially, and just how I want to be rather than other people. So the rejection sensitivity, learning about that, and the people pleasing as well is really, like, I didn't, going into the program, I didn't think that I would have much of an understanding of that until I was told, and then it was like, right, I understand why I do this and what I want to change myself and start doing. So I feel like it's definitely matured me in that way, especially social. And I'm very happy it has, because it's just makes everything easier,
Oh, so
yeah.
good. Yeah, we're so pleased. I mean, we couldn't be happier. And it's, I bet, like, the name is a bit misleading. I guess you never thought.
It's the academic period of time of life, isn't it? It's not strictly related to only school. It's the period in which the students are.
And beyond, though. I mean, it sounds like, what Charlie's been able to do in terms of shifting, the way he used to just be, in terms of the standard he set himself in terms of his wants and needs, which, in coaching, we're always encouraging our ADHDers like Charlie that tend to people please, what would, we ask, what would you do if you were the Charlie that wanted more? needed more, expected more. So, you know, setting that higher standard for yourself, which it sounds like Charlie's managed to do, which is incredible. I mean, that's transformational. That's kind of whole, you know, that sliding doors movie in which it could be this life or that life. Charlie's literally done that. And, you know, I mean, that's the best possible outcome we could ever hope for. So yeah, Charlie's a living example. Oh, you're our poster, a posted person for the program. Yeah, and we're so pleased. We're so pleased that you derive these benefits. And how are you going though with, I mean, obviously you're not in a program now for university. We were looking at a university success program, Charlie. And so if there was one, you'd be on it. But we haven't quite got things in place for that. We're still focusing on high school success.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how are you traveling? How are you going, you know, how are you keeping yourself on track without something like the program? Like how's it going?
Much better than, you know, yeah, my independence is definitely, it's much better, definitely. After the program, it's just been, it's weird because like I sort of notice it now when I wouldn't have before. It's, you know, getting a structure in, prioritizing organization, which was not my thing, but now that I'm doing it, it generally makes all the difference. I mean, I'm going in and I'm getting work done, which I would have never done myself, and sticking to stuff, but I'm not feeling pressured or anything. It's just something that I feel like, right, I want to do this now, and I'm, you know, so it's really good. And it feels like before I would always need to have that sort of push and push and push. But now it's kind of like after I've, you know, done the program, it's just all the things that I've come across in the program seem to like, now I realize all of it's happening. It's like, it's weird, like it's really good. But yeah, I mean, I went to like the they allocated like specialist support with studying and stuff. And the guy was, because obviously for like ADHD and things, and I was like, I was already telling him stuff that I knew that he didn't even know himself, which is quite, that was quite cool. I was like, oh yeah, that's why that is. And with other people too. I mean, the majority of my class, the lecturer asked, oh, does anyone have anything? And everyone put their hand up for ADHD except for like 2. And even the lecturer themselves had it. So it was like, I've found myself like telling people and sort of not telling them, but you know, like showing them why this might be like this and how they're feeling like this, like just in a way, and they're like, oh yeah, that's true, and like helping them. So it's just
those creative types, isn't it?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, so yeah, that's you are an ambassador now. Like, you know, we were saying, you're truly being an ambassador and raising awareness, advocating. I mean, it's so empowering. This is what I see with you, Charlie. Like, and I'm sure Trisha, he's just so much more empowered. Like, he just seems, he's got this power behind him now. You know, there's this.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to hear this. I've hardly seen him since.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. But I've been so pleased because I think, you know, after the initial 2 days of thinking, what have I done? Where am I? It's just been flying, and it's fantastic. See, I couldn't be happier. And it's great that he's been able to impart that knowledge to other people. No, I'm so pleased. But yeah, he does seem like to have grown up overnight, really. So it's fantastic.
Hair as well now. It's a transformation, you know?
I mean, there's some things I have to say, have you done this? Have you done that yet? I think, you know, like get a bus pass, save some money and organise but he's so busy and he's doing and as long as he's doing the work, which sounds like he is, but that's great. But there is support there on offer. So yeah, he can get a mentor. He's had specialist software equipment to use. And I think the tutors are understanding. So, and I think now, you know, Charlie, that you can ask if you don't get something or you need a bit more support, the earlier the better, isn't it? You know, so
that's the main thing, isn't it, Charlie? The fact that, you know, because of RSD and the people pleasing, like we said, even if you did know what you needed, us ADHDs with the people pleasing, we don't want to inconvenience someone or, you know, like, oh, but I need to do it this way. Oh no, that's not going to help. And so we'll just be quiet and don't get the need met and therefore don't do very well. You know, we cop it, we take the hit. Whereas it sounds like you've got the confidence now, you know, to be able to say, that's not going to work for me, or, you know, which apparently, I mean, that's a good thing because it sounds like your mentor doesn't know as much about ADHD as you do. So it's even more important that you can tell him what's what. I'm not going to be able to do that, you know?
Definitely, definitely. And like I'll ask him for help with stuff as well with my work. That's been another thing. Like I did think at one point, oh, should I ask, because I don't want to feel like the person that's always asking, is this right? But they even say themselves, do it. And then I thought, no, this is my work and I want to, you know, improve. So that stuff like that, just little things have made all the difference.
Yeah.
And
Well done.
definitely.
It's just brilliant. No, honestly, we're so pleased. And yeah, and that's the other thing you said, which we were told as well when we were training as coaching, we were told most of the coaching happens between the sessions, you know, and I think all of us, you know, you can learn something at the time, but quite often it's not until later or a certain situation. And I think, like Sophie was saying, you can then bring the connections together. Oh, right. And then it all kind of makes sense. So it's brilliant that that's been able to happen for you. It sounds like you've been able to kind of, you're that type of ADHD that you can program all this good stuff and then you got it, you know, and that's going to like mean all the difference for you after education, because obviously the workplace, right? A whole nother set of challenges, you know, people you're going to navigate, politics, office politics, and the fact that you know who you are, you're able to ask for, you know, to be able to do things in the way that you can do them, right? You can set expectations clearly and early. You don't understand how important that is in the workplace, you know, with the ADHDs that we, you know, help support that haven't learned that yet, you know, but you've learned it now. And so, no, yeah, again, sliding doors, your life, we're really confident, really happy that you deserve it. He's amazing.
And I think what's really good with the course, Stephanie, is that it's almost two for the price of one, because I've learned so much about myself and I can see a lot of similarities between Charlie and me. And when I look back how I studied, very similar, and I knew nothing about all of this, but it kind of helps me at work now, thinking, all right, I'm not getting that report done because and I need to make it a goal and a priority, and, you know, sort of just motivate myself and move myself across that barrier, but also just not beating myself up too much about it, thinking, well, that's the way my brain works, and I've got a lot of strengths, and sometimes when I'm performing at my best, I'm just brilliant. You have days where you feel like you're on fire because you've got all these deadlines, and others where you're just so demotivated and it's a struggle. So I think it's helped me, and I have recommended it to a colleague whose son's just been diagnosed with ADHD, probably slightly older than Charlie, who's in a workplace. I said, you may be able to, you know, access to work or something.
Yeah.
But I've recommended the program or, you know, coaching to the ADHD coach for them. So yeah, we're totally indebted to you, and assuming time's running out, but I just wanted to say, yeah, I think if I'm recommending it to other people, I would say really wish we'd had this at GCSEs. It's been a real godsend. The support, understanding from you, Stephanie, and other coaches has been invaluable. I think peer support's been great for Charlie, and I think he's made friends through the process too. The information you've given is accessible, easy to understand, and it's presented with expertise, but in a very supportive, empathic way, covering quite complex issues, really. But clearly it's made an impact on Charlie, and he can understand it and apply it to life, which is the important thing. I think it's tailored to each people's needs. So, you know, he was doing his study needs and revision, while other people were, you know, it wasn't all kind of the same thing. So it was very tailored, and I think, you know, it was been so welcoming, and it felt like a bit of an extended family, and such a relief. And I think you probably saw me at the beginning. I was quite emotional because it's been a struggle, you know, in relating to other parents. So yeah, it's been an absolute blessing. So thank you so much.
Oh, dude, it's the absolute honor and and I love how you use the word family because that's exactly how, we see you guys as well as part of this family, and we really do care, and nothing gives us more pleasure than being able to help you. And someone like, I mean, you guys are brilliant. Charlie's got so much potential, and I think the other coaches can also, they were there as well. And yeah, I mean, we're very lucky to be able to have this kind of impact and be able to help people like Charlie reach what is going to be amazing potential. And yeah, we can't wait to hear your music. You probably, yeah. Are you
He's
feeling?
having his drumming lesson next, aren't you,
Oh,
Charlie?
the
You're in
guy's got
the-
the drumming.
Do you want to
Yeah.
demonstrate?
No, I'm okay.
The RSD's not quite overcome yet on that.
Yeah, you probably won't be able to hear it through the Zoom anyway. The time.
And he's found 6 others to live with next year. They all want to be living together, so that's great.
That is good. I have a feeling that Charlie's going to be running his own AC group coaching very soon. He's like, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we did say when we did your signature strengths, because we were talking about the kind of different steps. And obviously the first one was, look through the HD lens, but then the second one was, working out your why. And part of that was working out everyone's signature strengths. And yeah, Charlie's signature strengths very much lend themselves to, I think we even joked, you'd be a great coach, Charlie. And I said, Charlie, if the music doesn't work out, come back, have a chat, you're welcome.
And even I was even thinking earlier when you were studying psychology and we were making the comparison, of how useful it could be for you, especially if you're going to be in a band and working with loads of people. And now again, it's fallen into place and you're teaching actually other, the head of diversity, if that's the person you spoke to, a few things that they didn't know about. So that's absolutely amazing.
Exactly.
And I think, things happen for a reason, and it's worked out well. Yes, there was a couple of days of disappointment of not heading to Glasgow or whatever, but when I think of Leeds, I think Charlie's it fits him so well. It's modern, light, it's kind of practical as well as theory, and he's just having a ball, aren't you? Yeah, it's great.
It is.
Definitely thriving. It's so good to see you. Like, we'll need to catch up with, you haven't seen Sophia. Just seeing, I know, guys, Sophie, Sarah, Eleni, seeing Charlie in, the place that we were working with him to get to is just, there's nothing better, isn't it? Seeing,
Oh, it's all down to you guys. Thank you so much.
You.
No, not only us. Not only
And your
us.
mom? Hey, your mom.
Oh yes, no, yeah. When I meant you guys, I'm
No, well,
And you,
village.
definitely.
Yeah, but it takes a village. This is the thing, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, lean into interdependence, look at how amazing these kids, sorry, not kid, obviously, very young person, young man, but with ADHD are, and the potential, and quite often without support, again, sliding doors, it can go a different way. So, I'm so glad that you lent into support, Trisha. It was a pleasure to, to be able to give that to you. And yeah, Charlie, I'm sure is going to go on to do awesome things. I know, did you ever, that zombie movie? I actually think I'm coaching someone that's creating that zombie movie, by the way, or helping, on the film of that. But did you ever take up any of those acting opportunities?
Well, I've got a few more, but it was when I was doing like actual exams. But now I've changed it to Leeds. I think they've got to wait a bit until they can start getting casting and stuff. But I'll keep my eye on the lookout for any.
But did he tell you one of the reasons why he rejected that one?
Oh no, yeah, it was because they're just you had to be like a zombie and naked and stuff.
Yeah, I remember, that. I think you might have said that during the time we met all together in the park. It was quite.
Yeah. It's just not for me.
But there's still that.
No.
There's still that option, though. Sounds like, again, you can choose. So how excited are you about your future now, Charlie? Like, how do you feel?
I feel very good. I feel very excited, and it feels right. So yeah, I'm very happy.
Yeah, well, again, absolute pleasure. This is what we do, and you know where we are as well. And
Yeah.
obviously, be the first to know when we actually get the University Success Program off the ground. Just still working on the high school, you know, one thing at a time. We're trying to practice what we preach to, Charlie. It's not, you know, we do things for others we can't do for ourselves sometimes. But that's the other thing, isn't it? It's about giving yourself permission, you know, not, you know, there are things that you will struggle to do. Like, did that really help you, just kind of finishing off in terms of the ADHD lens and the expectations you're placing on yourself, you know, what you're expecting to do? Would you say you're being kinder to yourself now in terms of, well, I'm just not good at that, or that's probably not going to happen that way, you know? Are you being kinder to yourself now?
Definitely, I'm keeping in a better mindset, definitely a healthier one. It's not like, oh, I'm not like sort of scold myself for something. It's definitely, I feel much more supporting myself
Yeah.
as well as, you know, because of the support from others. So it's definitely in every aspect. It's definitely.
Yeah, telling a new, more empowering story. Yeah, no, for sure. And the haircut, that just the added
Yeah.
power, empowered, you know, no, you look great, Charlie.
Thank you.
Don't you ages to grow that hair?
Well, it'll grow back fast. It'll grow back fast. It's fine.
No, I like it. Fine.
Yeah, so no, but it's like, yeah, do keep us, you know, yeah, keep in touch. And if you ever any challenges, just get in touch. Trisha, same. You know, we've got, you know, the monthly parent support group. And
Okay.
then Trisha found that helpful in addition to the, you know, well, part of the program,
Definitely.
that monthly kind of group coaching for parents. So that was a great chance to check in as Charlie was doing the program. You know, you were checking in with us as well in terms of how you were
Yeah,
things at home, and yeah, that helped as well in terms of just
definitely. Just hearing other parents as well, similar, and I suppose acknowledging that kind of genetic link a bit, that you know, but not in a blaming way. It's all my fault. It's kind of like, just, you know, we've got strengths as well, and it's just playing to those strengths and knowing what works for us. So but we're all so unique, you know. So but yes, it was, and just the webinars and the resources around and hearing more about that rejection sensitivity and time blindness and things like that was really valuable. So
no, it's
so yeah, can't thank you enough.
thank you, and thank you for
And
coming.